Hello, everyone. In today's episode, we'll be talking with education leaders from the Lake County School District in Tavares, Florida. They will share with us their experience with Solution Tree, the impact of professional development, especially with the professional learning community process, as they share with us their success story with Lake County School District becoming a model PLC. With us today from Lake County School District, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Leadership, Emily Feltner, and Executive Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, Amy Cockcroft. Thank you for joining me for this episode.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's so exciting to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to get into your, because this is different. This is a district we're talking about, a whole. And then when you explain to me the size of it, the amount of schools that are incorporated, it's a lot. It's a lot. But you guys do it amazingly. All right, so let's get into it with our first question. So prior to applying to be a model PLC, you have interacted with Solution Tree Associates and the resources available. Can you both share with us your first encounter with Solution Tree?
Amy, I'll start. So I don't know if it was Solution Tree or just Rick DeFore, but I was introduced to Rick DeFore in 2002. So that's 20 years ago. I worked in a district in the middle of Missouri, and he came to work with one of our high schools. So I was able to watch him and work with him as he led a high school through developing common formative assessments through a project called High Schools That Work. From then we visited Adlai Stevenson and worked on his pyramid of interventions. I wanted to see what that work looked like. So I think back in really my formative years, he really shaped my beliefs about what was right for kids, and it just made so much sense. And honestly, I have just followed Solution Tree's work and been involved with the Solution Tree work in the PLC process ever since. And it's just a deeply ingrained belief system for me. And so Solution Tree became a part of my life a little bit after that. And so we've always been a part of the work with them.
So for me, I 5 years ago, when Emily came to the district and started talking about the PLC at work events, I'm like, I gotta go. So was able to attend my first PLC at work event about 5 years ago, and then have been, I think, just about every summer, or we had someone here because we felt like everybody in our district needed to have exposure to this work because it's so powerful.
I agree. It does have, it resonates, it stays with you. And it is very powerful in everybody that you get to interact with because they're just so easily accessible. It's not just like, oh, they get off stage and they leave. They stay. They talk to people. So that's very exciting. All right. So your district took great efforts to limit learning loss during the pandemic. Can you describe the actions taken?
I think it's interesting that you asked that because honestly, we took some actions, but really the work that we started 5 years ago is the work that helped us out during this pandemic. And while we may not have started the work for that, not foreseeing that was coming, it was actually the processes we put into play with the PLC process, with collaboration, with determining what was essential for kids to learn. Believe me, when we shut down in March, it was time to get essential. And so knowing that language, how to do that work already was ingrained in many of our schools and teachers, it became easier to really talk about that and to make sure kids got some essential learnings from when we shut down and went virtual for the first time. Over the summer, we did some virtual work with tutoring and made sure kids were able to remediate what we needed. We also did some acceleration. Our IT department put together some like summer camps virtually where they could go discover places virtually. So we really kind of tailored it to that idea of trying not to get a learning loss going. We knew math might be a problem, and so we really honed in on some tutoring for math. And then just sort of started some programs for kids who maybe didn't start kindergarten. So we had a lot of things going, thinking about the idea of time, that time is crucial for kids and that not everybody learns at the same rate. And so trying to provide extra time for kids to make sure that they would catch up. And We also wanted to make sure that we had a learning loss. Like there was kind of this big national surge. Everybody's going to have a learning loss. And one of the things that we did is we looked at data and said, do we really have a learning loss? And where are the areas that we've lost, instead of just saying everybody has a learning loss? And we really went back to that idea of focusing on results and what was happening with kids and their data. And then really kind of personalizing it to each kid and making sure that they got what they needed to catch up. Now, we're not quite there yet, of course, and we're still in that area, but we do find that the processes we put into place all throughout the 5 years is what really saved us. And I've said that before, that this PLC process, this belief system, the idea that we had to collaborate, we collaborated like major. I mean, it was, how could you not? Nobody could get through that pandemic alone. All of a sudden, we saw people creating virtual collaboration groups, building support teams, like just trying to figure out how to do the work virtually. We were not ready for one-to-one. And so we had a lot of learning to do really quickly, but because we were kind of a learning organization, we learned together, and then we served other students so that they could learn as well. I don't know if Amy, if you have some things to add to that.
Well, I think I just want to expand a little bit on that collaborative nature, because we had these systems across all schools. Teachers from different schools that you might consider singletons were able to come together and work together in the midst of that as well, because they had the same processes, they had the same language, the same understanding. So it wasn't every school for themselves, but we as a system were able to meet the needs of students across classrooms and schools.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually provides that support that just nobody felt like they had nowhere to start, because you had already had this implementation for them. Like, there's no excuse there, or at least it didn't look like there would be.
Right.
Now, there are many schools in the district. It's amazing. How many students are in the 90-mile-long district, and what strategies does the education leadership and teachers take to achieve equity throughout the district?
So we have about 46,000 students across 43 schools in our district. And I think that the strategies are really about building that shared knowledge across every person in our system. And I mean every person. Emily sends out a Transformation Tuesday that helps build shared knowledge that goes to every employee in our district, as well as starting that professional learning embedded into our system, starting with our leaders. We kick off every summer with the summer leadership, kind of building that foundation of where we're headed for that year based on monitoring the results from the year before and where we are. And then knowing that our principals are the ones that are going to lead that work the best, starting with them and our district leaders, training them around that shared knowledge, building understanding of the why. Mm-hmm. And then just they get to lead that professional learning in their schools with their teachers, while at the same time, the district leaders are any training that they do, same language, same understanding coming in from the direction that they're at, whatever training they're doing. So I think that embedded professional learning throughout to build that shared knowledge, of course, around the things that matter most, those best practices, like focusing on student learning, of course, using the data to progress monitor, and then just building that collaboration across all of the stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add on to that. We kind of at the district level, sort of, I don't know how to say it, but it was almost like a layered approach. And I've done a lot of, I'm an avid reader, and so we sort of used some of Anthony Mohammed's kind of core tech. So the first summer we just talked about what is it that we want all kids to experience in our classrooms, and to have an equal opportunity. Like, it shouldn't matter where you go to school as to what experiences you get. So the idea, we kind of formulated that idea of, if we're going to end the educational lottery, then what is it we want kids to experience in schools? And that was a big conversation. So it wasn't just about the standards and what they're going to learn, but how do we want them to learn now? Like, what experiences should they have? What life skills should they come out with? And so we started with that the first year. And so that every month we met and we looked in schools, we walked classrooms, and we met with collaborative planning, and we had that opportunity to really look at that all throughout the year. And the next year we looked at, I used kind of the transforming school culture from Anthony Mohammed as sort of my basis for the work we did that summer, and like really talking about the difference between culture and climate and building a learning culture. rather than just a climate of people being generally happy. And we really talked about the difference between that and really building this learning culture. And then all throughout the year, we've spent time working on that as well. And that's when we introduced the learning formula, the idea that quality instruction has to vary, and so does time. And that's how we get learning to be constant. And it's interesting because our leaders know that formula and they will talk about it. And so we really worked on that. And then that introduced an intervention. We kind of layered up, okay, some schools had intervention. They were trying that out after they'd gone to the PLC Institute. But then it became like an expectation. Like, why would some kids get time during the day to learn and others not? And so because we had this whole idea of what do we want kids to experience from the very first year, we then were able to say all kids deserve some time during the day to be able to catch up, to be able to get extra help, to be able to relearn. And it allowed so we kind of put out, it was probably the very first thing I've ever mandated in a way, but I mandated it with understanding, right? We built the shared understanding from the bottom, and then we said everybody should get it. And so we started kind of that intervention block. It's not perfect. It takes a long time to get that right. And then this year we kind of have that walk to intervention. So the next year I did time for change from Anthony Mohammed. So I could be his book talker because I worked that into my keynote. We spent some time with that talking about what are some essential leadership skills you have to really lead a change organization. And about that time it was time for him to come in, right? I'd done kind of justice for him. And so that next summer is when we were able to have him in, and that's when we shut down from the pandemic. And I got to tell you, Amy was adamant about we're not seeing him, and I was too. So we made that happen, and it definitely changed the way of the work that next year. It helped us stay out of the managerial pieces and really focus on the idea of equity and our kids being able to access what they need, especially during a shutdown and during virtual learning. And so I think knowing the progression of how it was going to unfold was very helpful. We didn't try to put everything on people at one time, but building understanding along the way, like Amy talked about, really we were able to build a culture and a belief system that everybody holds, to understand if not this, then what, and nothing else makes sense.
But I think that the depth that was created too from continuing this process, adding on each year with a little more depth of understanding and the why behind it was a lot of what helped make us successful in that.
And not just throwing everything out there, but building, that's a perfect way of saying it, building onto it, because that's what happened. So what would you say is the most, I'm sure you get feedback from your leadership, from principals and teachers. So what is the most constructive that you've heard back from them?
A constructive in a way that says what's next, or in a constructive in a positive way? I'm not sure I understand, but I guess I can answer them. Either one. I think we are still definitely working on the intervention piece, especially because of where we're at in 2022. It's been a little difficult to make sure kids get what they need and to move. And it's just a way of overcoming the pandemic pieces. But it's interesting because as I've gone to visit schools recently, they are still trying to figure it out. They're still trying to have a walk to intervention system, and that every kid deserves the teacher who knows how to teach it the best, and that they get that particular instruction to make sure that they actually can learn the essential standards. And so I really feel like we're still working in that area probably the most. But in terms of in a positive way, I think what really helps is that we still invest in that PLC at Work Institute, that we believe that we want every leader to take a new team as many times as they can. And we refer to it around here as church for educators, because everybody needs that shot in the arm. And I go every year. We invest. District leadership goes. I don't believe in sending people without the people who are leading it going with them, because it's really hard to bring back if you don't have the leadership with you. It's hard to be that excited and then come back and then the leader not know what happened. And so because we really, really invest in the idea that we have to be learners to serve learners. I think that piece, people say we talk the same language they do. Like they're like, well, Emily, you said the same thing last month. Like, right. So it's when some expert says it to you, when Mike Matos is up there, when Tim Brown is up there, when Anthony Mohammed is up there, and we and they're saying, they're validating the work that we're doing, and then giving us sort of one more little piece to think about. It's monumental around here. So we definitely believe that we have to keep going and getting learning from the experts to be able to put it into place. I probably believe now that we could probably contribute to some of those expert voices, but because we are getting to a point where it really is a belief system. I don't know how else to say that. Like we talk about a PLC process, and it is a process, right? It's not one more thing, it's the thing, it's how we do business around here. But it reaches the core of what we believe. And that's really important to me, that we have that belief for kids.
I love that. I love what you said earlier about being learners and being learners for the ones that you're teaching who are also learning. That's very, very good. Now, one of our STEAM Solution Tree authors and associates, Dr. Anthony Mohammed, was, you said, in your district about 2 years ago. Can you share with us the experience of learning with him and the strategies that were embraced by the district?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to, anyone want to start. I'll start. I have to be real and honest. We were a little nervous about him coming in and talking about equity and access, and using the text overcoming the achievement gap trap, because we have a very diverse district, and we weren't really sure that everybody would be open to listening and being willing to really take in what he said in a neutral way, and to be able to think about it in terms of serving students rather than sort of personalizing maybe some of the things that were going to come up. Our leadership team, my cabinet with Amy on it, and several other regional executive directors and executive directors, we were reading the book, and so we sort of had an idea of what was coming, and had kind of done some research. And so Amy and I did a call with him to just sort of say, we're hoping that we're ready, and we want to be ready. And I guess people kept warning me, like, Emily, like, I don't know if we're ready. And I was like, we're going to be ready. We're getting it. We're doing it anyway. It's the right thing to do. We were ready enough. And so, but when he came in, he presented it in a way, again, that just helped us see differently. Like just that it really was about what structures can we consider to make sure more kids have access to high levels of learning. And some of the strategies that came out of that day were things like, we began to partner courses that would support kids in being able to take an honors class. Whereas some kids, we looked at some kids that had never taken an honors class. And we talked to those kids, and schools would meet with those kids and say, why haven't you? And they were like, we don't even know how to take one. We don't know how to sign up for one. And so, or an AP class. And so we began meeting with parents and students to say, you know what, these are accessible to your kids. We are an open access district, so all kids who want to take courses are able to. So we kind of thought that was enough, until we realized we were not getting with kids, each kid, and saying, do you know how to sign up for one of these? Like, you don't realize you could take one of these and get college credit? They had no idea. And so that was a big aha for us. Like, we should be looking at our data, finding out if there's any kind of subgroup that's not achieving at a high level, and then how do we support them to make sure that they do. And so schools had the opportunity to look at their data during that day. We had some more open conversations. Anthony refers to some of the content as offensive, that it's sensitive and it might offend people. And so we've definitely taken on that phrase. And then some of it was a little bit, but I was really proud of people. They were inquisitive. They listened. He had great real life scenarios as to what he did. He had strategies for things to consider, like partnering classes, like really looking at data and making sure you know what the obstacles are. We now have, we opened up the SAT for everybody so that kids could know how to actually take the SAT and ACT. We've had the ACT for a while, but we now have the free SAT. We started some programs in terms of regionalizing different types of programs for careers, getting our communities involved. And then throughout the year, we did a lot of work with leaders. And it was the year, it was 2020 and 2021, where we were probably about 75% capacity, and we had some online learning and in-house learning, and we met a couple of times. We were limited that year with what we did. We did book studies, having some open conversation about our own biases and how we approach making sure all kids learn and having access to all opportunities. And we also just had some leaders had some really honest conversations. We had some really great connections to each other. I would say that year, through that year after he came, was probably the year that we really bonded as a collaborative group. And I mean 45 leaders, 158, administrators. Like, we really came together and learned more about each other, both personally and professionally. And it really opened up for conversation. I don't know, Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think you hit it exactly correctly. Like the ability he has to have you think about things, not accusatory. It's our reality, like from where our reality was. But when we say we look at data, it wasn't just student achievement data by subgroup. It was what does your policy manual say? What does your parent guide say? Like, who has access to that? And really looking at which kids we were looking at what kids were performing by subgroup in the class, but who is in the class? What is the access there? How does that compare to each other? And I think he gave us a different lens to look at it in a very safe, he made it safe for us to have those conversations. It was very powerful over those 2 days to be able to see the leaders in our schools and our district as well, just really talk through what that means. And then the action that they took as that followed throughout the year, even in the midst of what we were going through, right? Like as a nation. So it was definitely affirming for us that we were headed in the right direction and that we were ready. We had the foundation set around some of those principles and those beliefs. And no matter what school you were in, you had a group of students that wasn't getting the same access as the others. And what does that look like? And how can we fix that? That's where we ended. How can we fix it? He kind of challenged us in saying, if it's happening in your district, if it's happening in your school, I'm talking to the leaders. So who's allowing that? And it was like, oh, okay. So we have to do something. And we did.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I want to make sure that we go back to what Amy said earlier, and in an earlier part of this, was that everybody was there. So the superintendent was there. But we had board members there. We had finance there. We had HR there. We had operations there. So that we really believe that we are here to serve students. And sometimes those departments feel like they're the business side of things. But we really wanted to make sure that they knew that students were at the center of this. So when they make decisions, are we making decisions that allow or are barriers for access? And thinking about, like, do kids see people that look like them in terms of teachers, and how do we have recruitment? So there were conversations that expanded just past the student and classroom level. I think that's really important for people to understand. Like, when we talk about training, we invite everybody, and it's important for us to make sure that that they're there and they're at the table, especially when we have opportunities to have people in. We take them to the PLC institutes. Like, we make sure that everybody has had the opportunity to learn with us, and to develop that system of beliefs so that we have a shared understanding against for the whole learning organization.
I like that. It's a community, as you mentioned before, that you take care of your communities of each school, where each school is, but then also even within your peers, your leadership, also your own community, your own ecosystem within the other one, right? So that's so great that everybody is willing, because that's another issue that sometimes may come up, but it sounds that everybody wants to and is ready to. So that's so wonderful to hear. It's always exciting to hear. So in a previous conversation we did have, you mentioned the focus of student by student, skill by skill. I really, really like that part. Regarding graduation, can you talk about the improvement in graduation rate?
Yeah, I can. We started out 5 years ago with a graduation rate of 78%. And we set a goal of 90%, although our goal is 100, but we had to sort of set a benchmark place where we could get. So we thought that we'd start with 90. And over the 5 years, we are now sitting at 91% as of this year. So we're very proud of that fact. I think it starts with looking at the system at the top, right? So we built the first thing we did was restructure some departments at the top, and built a department called College and Career Readiness that really focuses on how do we create more opportunities, how do we get more kids connected to school, and that department in itself was a huge addition to how we were thinking. And then collaborating with that department, making sure that department and high schools and my cabinet were all working together to think about what's happening with kids. And then we had to really think about everything that was a barrier for kids to graduate. So part of it was that kids thought they were kind of getting lost. We were retaining kids and having kids repeat entire years when they had just failed one class. So it was that's a barrier for kids, right? Nobody wants to be a ninth grader and repeat ninth grade. So we began looking at documents, policies, procedures, our student progression plan. We revamped that to make sure that kids were going ahead and being able to go on to their sophomore year, because we know that freshman year is really where a lot of people decide they're not going to go on. And so kids can now in all levels can move up into the next grade level and just have time, because we do have an intervention time during the day, to be able to go back and catch up and make sure that they repeat the essential learning and repeat a course maybe that they weren't successful at the first time, that they have that chance. But we had to change a lot of policies and procedures, and then do kind of a whole wraparound services for kids. So we changed some of our practices, we changed some of our policies, revamped our student progression plan. So all of it comes, in fact, none of that yet is at the school level, right? So then what we did is we added a position called graduation facilitators, and we call them grad facilitators. And basically those kids look at everybody in the graduation cohort and make sure that every kid, skill by skill, student by student, have the courses they need and are connected in some way and are going to graduate with an opportunity to move to a career or an opportunity to go to college. And our counselors help with that process. And so again, honestly, it comes back to collaboration. Like, we were kind of operating in silos, and schools were kind of doing their own thing to survive. And we called that a system of schools. And we, over the years, have built a school system, and that we operate as one, and that we work together to make sure all kids mean all kids. So it's not just your kids at your school, but it's all kids in our district are ours. And what we've seen, while we're really proud of that graduation rate, is we've also seen that our subgroup data has improved, that we are graduating more kids in all subgroups. And I think that's something to be really proud of as well. So while the percentages sound great, we do graduate more kids every year, and we do it by getting them connected, making sure they're on the right path, and allowing kids to sort of get interested. We also expanded opportunities in schools. So instead of having just a construction academy at one school, we now have it regionalized in 3 schools. So because our district is so large, kids were not going to drive 70 miles to get to high school every day to go to this one program. So the College and Career Readiness Department, what they've done is they've created programs at different places in our district so that kids can go to those if they're interested in them. So we've expanded opportunities in that way. Again, like I said, we opened up SAT testing. We now allow all kids to take the SAT, the ACT, to show them that they could go to college, because some kids don't even realize that they might be eligible to go to college, and really worked with kids on what they need and developed a path for them. And so we're really proud of the fact, and we also have really high expectations. We had kids here that thought that it was okay to take 5 years to get through high school. We're like, no. We're going to get you through. Like, it's 4 years. Like, you have 28 opportunities. We have 7 block day to get 24 credits, and we're going to get you there in 4 years. And so we raised that expectation. So I think having really high expectations for kids. And then Amy's department really has worked on this idea of quality assignments, and having high levels of learning, and being able to we have a common vision for what experiences kids should get, and that they are allowed to talk and learn to communicate and collaborate themselves. And I think that's all been a part of it. But I think really that idea that, and also we're talking, when we start at kindergarten, what are we doing in kindergarten that is hindering kids as a 12th grader from graduating? And we discovered some things. Like, when we brought the data K-12, we look at the data K-12, principals were like, oh my gosh, like, I actually contribute to them thinking they can't learn in kindergarten. and to teachers thinking they can't learn because maybe I label them as like these kids are like not ready and above level, right? And when we say that about kids, when we label kids, all of a sudden people begin to think that that's where they are. And so what we stopped doing is stopped labeling kids. Like, this is just where they are right now. This is the opportunities they've had so far. And we stopped putting labels and ceilings on kids. That's another big part of the thing we did. And we start that when they enter our schools at kindergarten.
That's wonderful. Now you recently received the news of obviously becoming a model PLC school district, district, not school. Can you share with us the process of applying? I know it is a lot, and how you felt when having that conversation with Mr. Matos.
Amy, you want to start?
I can gladly start that. So the process of applying, it was a lot, but it was great because we started that with the executive cabinet, honestly, and charting out our story, chart paper. We got out chart paper and just started mapping out our story throughout the the last 4 or 5 years, and how every piece has led to a deeper understanding for us as a district and how it benefited our students in the end, because that's what we want, right? Like, we didn't do this for us, we did it for the students and making sure that our students had equal opportunities. So that was joyous, actually, as we did that, to be able to map that out and really think about each piece and remember. Like, we went back through documents and gathering all that, so that was a great opportunity for our team to be able to do that. And then just putting it together, talking to some of our key principals that were a part of this work too, and getting more information, getting artifacts from their schools as they learn the process and we're implementing it in their schools. And it was actually, yes, a lot of work, but great work to do and to follow through on. And I'll let Emily talk about the phone call when we were able to, or the Zoom call when we were able to find out.
Yeah, so we had to look at data really differently. Like, we had to sort of, because one of the things that they asked us at the end before we met with Mike Hagedorn and Mike Matos was they wanted to know sort of how did we fare in the pandemic? Like, how are we doing? And so we went back and sort of analyzed some data, and it was like really cool because we thought it was really bad, and it wasn't. Like, we did really well, and we were like, okay, so we held our own, and that was sort of something we needed to see, and it gave us more hope and more energy to really keep continuing on, and realizing that we can do that. This process has led us through this challenging time, and that it will continue to take us through even more challenging times that maybe we don't know are coming, and this was certainly something unexpected. So when we got on the call, we had some data collected, and it was good data that said that our district had definitely held its own and not had as much learning loss as other districts had. And we are a very large district. And I don't know that we mentioned, but it's 100% free and reduced lunch. And so it was a district that definitely has some challenging needs. And when we got on the call, and Mike was talking about, he liked what data we had collected. He was impressed with the idea of the work that we had done, and asked us to talk a little bit about that. And that was really nice to be kind of one-on-one, if you can consider that, on a Zoom call with him. And then, like, sort of, I didn't really expect that we were going to get told that day that he was going to recommend that, but he was going to recommend that we became a model PLC district, and I cried. And I think because I've never thought that the work is done, so I've never really applied because I've never thought it was good enough, and finally somebody kind of said, listen, it's a journey and not an end, and so it's okay to show your journey, and once your journey starts showing results, and I had never done it in a district, and I think I've led schools, and I've had many schools that I've led, from the lowest performing school in a district to a high performing school, and that was great work when I was a principal. But I was really interested in leading a large system and understanding how this work impacted more than just one school. And so that's why it was really important for me as a model district to be able to say, we do this from the top. We do things with people, not to people. And I really did. It was sort of a moment when I realized that Rick and Becky Dufour are some of my main mentors in my life as in education, and that we were going to be honored for work that he started. And so I think that really hit me hard. And so I'm like tearing up now, but it was just really, it was really a moment for me. So, and I was proud of our district. I was proud of the work we had done. I mean, this team is amazing, and I think we deserved it. And so, and I do want to share our story. I think there are not many districts that are as large as we are, that have invested in this kind of learning together. And I think we're a learning organization, and I think that's a huge part of it. And so I'm really proud. And his confirmation, of course, was really validating for us. And so it was really special to me. I know they kind of made fun of me, but it was really a cool moment.
We knew you would cry. We didn't make fun of you. We were just as excited along with you. It was just we weren't expecting to hear on that call. We kind of went into the call saying, wouldn't it be great if, and then it happened, and we were all kind of like shocked, I think. But and I think that's the ultimate respect that we have for Mike Matos to say that to us, knowing that we sit there and learn from him every year, every summer at these institutes, and to learn from him, and then to have him say, all right, and knowing, I agree, Emily, we have work to do. We're going to continue that work. But it was just an amazing feeling to know that that's what we were doing for kids.
So having already gone through the implementation process and knowing its procedure, what advice would you give other districts interested to venture in their own journey to becoming a model PLC?
I think I would say that it's not a checklist. You're not going through check, check, check. It has to permeate through all stakeholders in your district, and deliberately, step by step, deepening understanding around that shared knowledge for that vision, starting with the student. What do you want that student experience to be? And then just continuously building on that. I think when you think, okay, we've done that, everybody has that, you got to do it again. Like, they don't. You have to keep building, or somebody new has come in. You got to continue to make it part of this belief system of your organization. And just, if it is your way of work and your belief system, all those other things go away. You don't have to train all those. You don't have to do all those things. This is what all the professional learning in your district is centered around.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that when it comes to becoming a model PLC district, even at school, actually, you have to live it. Everybody in the organization has to be a part of the process and be a part of the learning. And we live it from the top. It's a belief system we all have. The superintendent has the belief system. We collaborate together and we keep students at the center. My cabinet collaborates. I have an expectation that anybody in my areas collaborate at least once a week and have set that time apart to make sure that we all are one well-versed system in terms of making sure kids get exactly what they need, and that includes learning at high levels. So I think the idea that we answer the 4 questions and we go through that process. What are we doing with kids that aren't learning? How will we know? Like, thinking about how assessment works. Are we doing enough of that? Are we doing too much of that? How does that work at this? How do we teach people how to make common formative assessments? Just the whole process, we live from the top. And 5 years ago, at the very first time we were all together in a room, we said that we will do things with you and not to you. So it is not a process you put into place at schools. It's a process that you live as an entire learning organization. And that's really key.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that's just good to hear because you never know. Some people might just be interested in just your take on how your process was as well. Maybe they're not ready, like how you thought you were ready, but you were so ready. Maybe they are also kind of on the verge of wanting to apply. So thank you for your advice. All right. So Emily and Amy, thank you so much for sharing your success story with us.
It really has been a pleasure. It's a great, it's a story that's not over, but it's certainly a really good opportunity to share what we've done so far. And so, really, honestly, it was an honor. So thank you for the opportunity and to share what we've done so far.
I agree. What an amazing honor. And we're just so thankful.
All right. To learn more about their strategies and data on becoming a model PLC district, visit the district's page at www.allthingsplc.info. And in the section where it says see the evidence, go ahead and look for Lake County School District. Also, visit our solutiontree.com website to learn more about Dr. Anthony Mohammed and if you would like to request his professional development guidance. At Solution Tree, we share your vision to transform education to ensure learning for all, and we can help you make this vision a reality. No other professional learning company provides our unique blend of research-based, results-driven services that improve learning outcomes for students. We appreciate you tuning in, and make sure to navigate to our solutiontree.com/podcast page to listen to our other episodes. Also, subscribe to our channel today for free on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us.